What's ahead for our property markets, not just now, but in the medium and long-term future? Wouldn't you like to know? Because if you did, that would make you a more successful investor, wouldn't it? Well, we understand that forecasting just seems to be getting harder and harder. There are so many conflicting factors out there. But in today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, I discuss 3 megatrends that are going to signal Australia's future with leading demographer Simon Kuestenmacher, so that at the end of today's show, you'll have more clarity about what's ahead, and that'll help make you make better investing and business decisions. So welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
What are the big trends that are going to signal Australia's future? Well, that's one of the topics that Simon Kustenmacher, co-founder of the demographics group, recently wrote about in his weekly column in the New Daily. Now, it's hard to forecast the future because look what's happened in the last couple of years alone. Natural disasters, COVID, the war in Ukraine. No one could foresee that. But forecasting still is an important exercise, and I know it's what you do all day, Simon. So welcome.
Great to be back.
Now, Simon, I know you look at the macro trends and the micro trends, but let's look at 3 of the big demographic megatrends that help you in your forecasting.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the reason we still need to do forecasting is because we want to know the future as closely as possible. We can't, of course, know this. We don't have real crystal balls. But once we know a couple of parameters a couple of goalposts that we are clear about, we can make our predictions in a more precise way. And I'd say one of the big megatrends that we want to be aware of is the continued urbanization of Asia. The Asian cities are going to continue to grow at rapid rates over the next couple of decades. They have done so reliably over the last 6-7 decades, and they will continue to do so in the future. What that means is not that we have a big surge of slums developing all across Asia. What this means is the largest emergence of a middle class in human history. That is huge and is going to continue. These new middle-class Asian markets demand a couple of things. They require building materials to build the cities. They require minerals to fuel those cities. That's needed. They demand foodstuffs that Australia happens to sell. The mining products, of course, we happen to sell. They demand education. Since they're slowly transitioning into knowledge economies themselves, we offer an English-speaking university-level education that will be continued to be in demand. And they want, a bit of fun. So our tourism offerings will be in demand. So we know that is, providing us with some sort of broad-scale optimism about our offerings, our Australian offerings to the world. So I'm very optimistic about the Asian growth and how it will help Australia.
Well, a percentage of them are also going to want to move to Australia. Oh, that's been the trend for a while, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Simply because once you are more educated, you can scan the world for opportunities to work, to live in more livable cities. And as long as Australia manages to provide livable, secure cities where your property is secure, where the rule of law is guaranteed, that sounds like a very good place. These couple of offerings alone are not given in all of the Asian cities that are growing. So you'll have people wanting to come here to get the best of what we have to offer.
Well, we're a rich nation. We offer safe cities. We've got plenty of high-income jobs. We offer good education for their children. And Well, I was about to say a democratic government, and it is, even though we may argue a little bit about the quality of our politicians, but there's a queue of people wanting to come in. And so this is going to underpin our population growth, which is obviously another big megatrend. But the government wants our country to grow, doesn't it?
Exactly. And the idea, not to open the Pandora's box of big Australia once again, from a geopolitical perspective, the bigger you are, the safer, the more influential your country is. So that's a very rough argument in favor of big Australia that will never go away because you are more powerful the bigger you are. And there is the idea that we live in a world where talent is a rare commodity. Sometimes I hear people talk negatively about migration because they fear overpopulation. The world as a system will not be suffering from overpopulation. We suffer from the opposite. The world is declining. We have, lots of data about the populations of China and Russia, for example, already suggest that they are going to shrink very soon. Apparently, lots of this data is utterly has been fudged with, and is really, we're talking about two declining nations already. The birth rates in Africa are falling way, way faster than anyone predicted. So we will see peak humanity at the very latest in the 2060s. We might even see peak humanity in the 2040s or 50s. So that means at this point, we're just fewer people, and you want to have more talent because as the age is shrinking, it is also automatically aging. That means it's hard enough to stop a country from aging, and it will get even harder. So any country that can offer attractive work and lifestyle opportunities to the young people of the world will be the winners of the new world order in a couple of decades.
Well, one of the ways we attract them is with our education system, and that worked really well till the pandemic and we closed the borders. So, what's likely to go ahead with that and university students here?
So the demand for an English-speaking education isn't going anywhere. That's only increasing as the Asian middle class is growing. One problem that we are facing here in Australia in terms of attracting international students is our very difficult path into citizenship. Lots of young talent, particularly from India, are now choosing Canadian education over Australian education simply because the path to Canadian citizenship is extremely easy compared to the path to Australian citizenship. And we, of course, are not handing out citizenships just as easily because we are not, as a nation, we're not comfortable just yet with the concept of a big nation. In Canada, there are plenty of reports written about Canada at 100 million, that is. They're currently at 35 million. So they are saying we're happy not, to add 2 times the population to the existing population base. That is a bold, big picture move of wanting to become a bigger power, of being sure about your offerings to the world, but also wanting to take responsibility, wanting to be a bigger player in the world. And the idea is Australia willing to do this? We are probably in Australia, politically speaking, very used to being the minor player, just the understudy of a global superpower, be it the British Empire, be it the American Empire, or might it be the Chinese Empire very soon.
Oh, we also need skilled migrants, though, don't we, Simon?
Every industry. I've not spoken to any industry body in the last year that isn't crying out for more skilled labor. And you can create the skilled labor that we need in 2 ways. You can either create it through the university and TAFE system, which is possible, but it takes quite a long time to bake an engineer in-house. It takes at least 4 years, and then you only get a junior engineer. To create a couple of tradies takes a couple of years through the TAFE system. It's not the fastest way. It's an absolute crucial way, and I'm a big, fan of making TAFE in particular universally free, because we must take away all the hurdles to a technical education if we want to build all the infrastructure that our budgets, wisely enough, are willing to pay for. All the state, all the federal budgets in recent years heavily put money aside for infrastructure, which is much needed. We allowed for 2 decades to grow population faster than infrastructure, which is a monumental mistake. And we're now willing to pay the price, to pay up, and to build that infrastructure. But at the moment, we can write all those projects in the budget papers. If we don't have the workers, those things will not be built.
So, as we're talking about the three big megatrends you and your business partner, Bernard Salter, the demographics group, look at when advising governments and organisations, one is our population growth, and that seems to be assured. What about our economic growth?
Well, I think it's fair enough to say that we will see short-term GDP growth because the stuff that we export goes up in price an awful lot. Even though we transition into a knowledge economy, it might surprise people a bit. We're not an overly complex economy. There's a thing called the economic complexity ranking, where Australia only ranks on place 70. So it's not a very favorable rank for us to be sitting at, considering we are the 13th largest economy on the planet. We make our money by selling the stuff that's in the ground, minerals, and the stuff that we grow in the ground, wheat and meat, to the world. That's how we make our money. Now that we have a global supply chain that is, operating a bit difficult at the moment, and we had the Ukraine war, where the two big wheat producers of Ukraine and Russia are concerned with other issues. That means prices for the stuff that we sell go up in the short term for sure, medium term probably as well. So that means we get more money for the stuff that we are selling to the world. That's good news, isn't it? So this will lead to more money floating into Australia, more money being thrown around. Sadly, the opposite logic is also true, because since we are not a very complex economy, we don't produce an awful lot of complex goods. We have to import all those complex goods, our computers, our cars, our machinery, our equipment, our pharmaceuticals, chemicals. We import lots of this stuff. And they will go up in price as well. So life will get more expensive, even though we might be on paper a bit richer. So these are our economic trends that I'm very happy and confident to be forecasting in the medium and short term.
Now, one of the things you mentioned a moment ago interested me, where you said Australia is the 13th largest economy based on the GDP. So we're definitely punching above our weight, and it's likely we may even go up the ranks a bit as Russia, which is a bit higher than us currently, or the last time they looked at it earlier this year. That's probably going to work its way down the ranks a little bit.
Absolutely. There's no way that we will not overtake Russia by the end of this year. The Russian economic sanctions are really hard. They will drive down GDP massively. We'll drive up our GDP a bit. We'll definitely be overtaking Russia. On rank 12 currently sits Brazil. They also have their work cut out for them. So that means we might well be nominally the 11th largest economy on the planet very soon, which is fascinating if you think about how small of a country we are with 25 million people. But of course, our resource boom and our resource power is solely driven by us sitting on a very big chunk of land that we can domineer and that we can dig stuff out of and sell to the world.
So hopefully this increasing improvement in our general economy is going to trickle down to the average Australian feeling more comfortable and wealthy as well, Simon.
Yes, you'd hope so, but there's a bit of interesting stuff you can do when you look at the GDP that one industry produces, and then you look at the number of workers that actually work in this industry directly. According to this measure, a worker in the mining industry creates $800,000 worth of GDP, which is an awful lot. The average Australian worker only creates $130,000 worth of GDP. So this is a sevenfold difference. It's a huge, huge difference. And the second largest economy, finance, which always is seen as the big dog in town, they only create $300,000 worth of GDP, an individual worker. That said, it makes sense because the productivity of our mining sector is not so much dependent on the amount of iron ore that we find, but by global iron ore prices, and they vary quite significantly.
So when we look at the three big trends that you're using for your forecasts, we talked about population growth, we talked about economic growth, and the last one you mentioned in your article in the New Daily was polarization of our labour force. Our workforce is hollowing out. Now, we've spoken about that in previous podcasts, but maybe you could explain that trend.
Yeah, so what that trend means is that our economy as a system has lots of ideas how to create highly paid jobs. They're so-called skill level 1 jobs, jobs where you need a university degree to be allowed in through the door. We create lots of those highly paid jobs. And we create lots of the jobs at the bottom, gig economy jobs, where you are being paid by the hour, by the item, by the kilometer. The only way to earn more money in these jobs is to work longer hours. But we are eroding the middle income jobs, the middle class. So the Australian workforce does not look like a bell curve where there are a couple of rich, couple of poor jobs, and mostly we all sit in the center of the bell shape. But our workforce much more looks like a letter U, where we have lots of rich workers, lots of poor workers, and a low number of workers in the center, and this center is actually not growing, but it is declining. So we are further hollowing out the shape of the letter U. That has a couple of implications. Very interesting, I would argue, for property investors is that don't worry about too much about the highly paid workers. They will always be able to buy their own home. They will be complaining about house prices like everyone else, but they will be able to afford homes. The middle class workers, don't worry about them too much because they're going away. But worry about the low income workers. What are they going to do? Where are they going to live? How possible is it to own a family-sized home on a truck driver's income in a capital city, on the income of a cafe worker, of a cleaner in a capital city? That doesn't work.
Property values have gone up 20, 30%, Simon, but the wages of these people have hardly gone up at all.
Exactly. And there's probably very little play that is possible here. So structurally speaking, we could say we want to automate as many skill level 4 and 5 jobs, low skilled, unskilled jobs as possible, send them over to algorithms, to robots, to machines, and upskill people that would have been destined for skill level 4 and 5 jobs into middle skilled jobs. That might surprise you, that concept, because I just told you that these middle skilled jobs are disappearing. But the good news is that we can create those middle skilled jobs at will. If we are willing as a government, as a country, to pay for the stuff that middle class workers do, we can create endless jobs. This is infrastructure, construction, renovations, and there will be endless demand for those jobs if we allow them to be coming into place. We can endlessly build infrastructure. God knows we have decades of infrastructure development to catch up on in Australia. We built over the last 2 decades in particular, we built quite a bit of building stock that is not of great quality, that will need significant overhauls in a decade or two. So there's plenty of opportunities for skilled artisans, for skilled tradies to be making very good living in Australia. But you need to get those skills. You can't just be a plumber. You can't just call yourself a plumber. You need to go to training. You need to go to a TAFE through vet education to do this. And we must take away hurdles so that more people are willing to take on such an education. So universal free TAFE. And we must continue to be willing to pay for these developments in our budgets.
Now, we're adding more highly paid workers and we're getting rid of the middle income workers and there are more poorly paid jobs. What's that going to do to social cohesion? I can see that as being a concern in this country, Simon.
Oh, it's a big issue because where does the social glue come from in a country where the people increasingly have
Where
very
there's a bigger gap. It's a wide gap, isn't it?
The gap is widening. You know, that cliche, it sounds like a cliche, but it is extremely true. So I'm looking desperately for items, for things, for activities that can provide the social glue. And I always have to come back to sports being the last remaining bastion where the rich and the poor in a meaningful way interact around the same topic of interest. And that's quite important, therefore, to make sure that sport is publicly available on TV, that people go to the same pubs, to the same stadiums to watch sports. And of course, that our local footy and netball clubs continue to reach out to a wide enough geographical area that rich and poor actually mingle in those same groups, that you have opportunities for children to meet children that come from households with a different economic background. That will help us massively to provide the social glue that's needed to make sure that we are a socially cohesive nation.
Well, as we look at these three trends then, these megatrends, our population growth can be assumed that our economic growth, especially in the short term, should be strong. And there is going to be some challenges as the middle class are disappearing. But I think these are important trends to take into account whether you're forecasting your personal future, your job future, your investment future, or your business future. So I really appreciate you having spent some time explaining these to us, Simon.
It's been a joy, and hopefully this will be helpful to some of your listeners.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. Look forward to catching up with you again in a month's time or so. Simon always brings an interesting perspective to what's happening in our world. That's why I love studying about demographics, and that's part of the detailed research our research team at Metropole does when we decide where we recommend clients buy property. And because we have very detailed evidence-based research to back up our recommendations, we actually never have sold properties. We only put strategic plans together for clients and then help them implement their plan using our buyer's agency. Often they use our wealth advisory, financial planning, renovations, development, property management, and even business mastery departments. I don't know what you'd require, but it makes sense in these current, more challenging times to get my team at Metropole on your side to, well, not just level the playing field, stack the odds in your favour. My team has won multiple awards, and I'm very proud of the results we've achieved. A recent audit showed that our clients are 7.3 times more likely than the average Australian investor to own 6 or more properties. And that's because we have a framework to develop financial independence through property that we share with our clients. So why not go to metropole.com.au, find out about what we do, leave us your details, and why not have a chat with my team to discuss your options. I look forward to being part of your ongoing wealth creation journey.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In today's Mindset Moment, I'd like to share a message I learned from one of my mentors, Jim Rohn, who explained, if you can change yourself, you can change your life. What Jim Rohn said is life is about constant, predictable patterns of change, and the only constant factor will be our feelings and our attitudes towards life. He said, we as human beings have the power of attitude, and that attitude determines choices, and the choices determine our results. All that we are and all that we can become has indeed been left up to us to decide and interpret through our attitudes and our choices. Jim Rohn said, life is like the changing seasons. You can't change the seasons, but you can change yourself. So the first major lesson in life is to learn how to handle the winters. They come regularly right after autumn. Some are long, some are short. Some are difficult, some are easy. But they always come right after autumn. And that's never going to change. Jim Rohn said, there are all kinds of winters. The winter when you can't figure it out. The winter when everything goes awry. There are economic winters, social winters, and personal winters. Winter times can bring disappointment, and disappointment is common to all of us. So you must learn how to handle winters. You must learn how to handle difficulty, because it always comes after opportunity. That's never going to change. The big question is what to do about winters. Jim Rohn said you can't read January simply by tearing it off the calendar. Of course, he was talking about the American winters there. So he said you can't just tear it out of the calendar, but here's what you can do. You can get stronger. You can get wiser. You can get better. Remember that trio of words. Stronger, wiser, better. The winters won't change, but you can. Before I understood this, I used to wish that it was summer when it was winter. When things were difficult, I wished they were easy. I didn't know any better. But then my mentor gave me the answer as part of his unique philosophy when he said, don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge. Wish for more wisdom. So the bottom line is, if you can change yourself, you can change your life. I always enjoy my monthly chats with Simon Kuestenmacher. He brings an interesting demographic perspective to our housing markets. And if you got some benefit and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. Help me in my quest to make as many people as financially fluent as possible. Now, I've got another way of helping you. Just go to podcastbonus.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au. And I've got a heap of reports and ebooks that I'd like to give to you as my way of saying thank you for listening to this podcast. I'll be back again real soon, but you can catch me on social media in the meantime. Why not join our private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update private Facebook group. As I said, I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael, but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?